Have you ever thought, what if I could be in one place and be doing something else in another? A simulation perhaps, but so detailed it would be like a real life. Enter virtual reality, or VR for short.
One of the earliest examples of virtual reality was invented by the stereoscope in 1939. It was very successful, eventually being used by more than 65% of the world's population, and you should probably remember using it in kindergarten. It is very primitive by today's standards. The image, although looking realistic, it didn't allow for the user to interact with the picture at all. The first computer using VR was invented in 1968 by Evan Sutherland and was called the Head-Mounted Display, or HMD for short. This was a major step in computer graphics, displaying simple wire-framed rooms and allowing the user to move around it. Which brings us to today. Today our VR simulations are much more realistic and detailed in their graphics, allowing for complicated user interactions due to our modern-day sophisticated computer programs. It is also much more available than it has ever before been. The following will be examples of what virtual reality is being used for today or in the near future and how it is implemented. The definition of virtual reality is a simulation of a three-dimensional image or environment that can be seemingly interacted with in a real or physical way by a person.
In the marketplace. The VR market was a small multi-million-dollar market from the 1950s to the early 2000s. It experienced growth in the 2010s with the large companies such as Oculus, HTC, Google, and Nvidia all providing for each other, even some buying each other out and expanding from their regular duties, focusing on VR. In 2015, the market skyrocketed to approximately 1.7 to 1.8 billion dollars, but this number in 2022 will be up to 33 billion. Countries have been making deals with these large VR companies, which is making the market expand, and that is why it will increase. This will create jobs at companies even in other countries and make them a better place. Medical VR. According to Forbes magazine, VR is very special because it is not just for gaming, but is used for medical scenarios. It is used to support the human mind. It is used to help cure phobias, mental illnesses, and PTSD. For example, it shows in a headset diagnosing their phobia and illness by showing them images. They can be used by students in medical school to help train the next wave of doctors and surgeons. Hospitals have been investing in more programs using VR and they have been a cheaper alternative to doing other procedures. Surgeons have been using them for simulations now for years. They are reliable and safe. In conclusion, VR is safe and cheap and reliable to use in the medical world. This is why we need VR right now.
Do you like to game? Well, get ready for a new and improved gaming experience. VR games are getting more and more popular than ever before for consumers who are bored of traditional games. Even today, you can get a VR headset to use for games as low as $120 or even lower with the budget products such as Google Cardboard, provided that you have a phone. In the past 30 years, VR games have gone from experimental simple polygon programs at the arcade to fully accessible, complex, and immersive, all from your living room. Today's VR allows you to see a full 360 degrees around just as you were there, and allows you to interact with the environment in either motion or controller peripherals. In addition, VR is getting cheaper to develop for, allowing for a more diverse and higher quality games available for the consumer, with developer companies such as EA, Ubisoft, and Steam investing and making a big effort to popularize it in the market. Many games in the future will have this technology developed for in new games. The impact this will have on the market will be a very diverse catalog of high quality games to enjoy with VR, but it is predicted that this increase of popularity in VR won't be great news for the people who don't like it, as the market shifts away from traditional games and more towards VR. VR gaming also has its health drawbacks as well, as playing games for a long time can cause nausea and dizziness, especially for racing games or those games in general that cause the user's head to twitch very frequently. Moreover, VR games can cause eye strain just as well, if not even worse, than traditional games, giving the users headaches. Finally, it can increase your heart rate, as being as immersive as they can make for a very scary experience, as it can seem very real. Which is why you could find very funny VR reaction videos like this one. This clip shows a man trying VR for the first time. As you can see, this man gets very scared as he believes he is actually on a roller coaster going down a steep drop and begins to thrash out violently in fear, to a rather amusing effect. VR also has a valuable use when it comes to education. With VR becoming cheaper and all, some school districts have even started using VR as a tool for education, no different to a chalkboard or a computer lab. With the help of VR, schools can have a virtual time machine at their disposal. VR can allow students to travel to different places and time periods to learn from a very realistic perspective. For example, this concept has been implemented by an elementary school in British Columbia, with students using VR to learn about indigenous culture. This could be adapted for any situation, really. The options are limitless, and increase young students' critical thinking. For example, students can follow Marco Polo and his travels in the Far East in history class, or learn from Inuit in anthropology class, or even conduct a virtual surgery for medical school training, anything that relates to curriculum. This can have impacts on students by helping them become interested in subjects or careers that they wouldn't have previously been interested in. But this too could have some potential drawbacks. There isn't any research available on how virtual reality impacts young developing minds. At this point, it is theorized that it could impact young children's development on telling the difference between reality and virtual reality, much like children having trouble telling the difference between real and imaginary. There is also an implementation issue associated with VR, like how much will it cost and which school districts will be able to afford it. As it is, it will be an experimental field of education for the coming years, as its use is very limited at the moment. But it could become very revolutionary in how we will educate students with technology, much how computer science classes all used to be done by paper and pencil, and how today's computers are viewed as essential for it. It looks like a bright future for the next generation of students and teachers who are using websites like classvr.com to plan their lessons with virtual reality elements.
War training in VR simulations. For the past 100 years, man has waged war on each other by conventional means, starting from throwing spears to using a bow and arrow to finally modern age of guns and tanks. What if you could practice huge military simulations without ever being in real danger? Well, that's what the American military is working on using virtual reality. The American military is outfitting some squads and battalions with virtual reality helmets and creating large simulations of battlefields that will allow them to practice military tactics and commands and moving in certain terrains such as jungles and deserts. In addition to allowing soldiers to practice their tactics, it will allow combat medics to practice their medical skills while under combat and allow them to handle the stress of trying to save a life while bullets are flying and explosions are going off. Also, VR will allow tank battalions and soldiers to practice driving and doing tank maneuvers such as firing guns, loading and unloading ammunition, and emergency maneuvers such as when a person gets shot and what to do if a fire accidentally happens in the tank and how to escape properly. Pilot training. With the addition of VR being added to lots of military bases, pilots started using VR to train in their aircrafts. Previously, pilots just went to a replication of the plane and just practice flipping the switches to gain the muscle memory and to remember the order of which switches needed to be lifted and switched off in the correct order as to allow the plane to fly. With the addition of VR, pilots are able to practice with gloves and goggles that are connected to the computer. The simulation will allow the switches being flipped on and off shown to the pilots and they allow the pilot to go through pre-flight plans and allow them practice flying, doing maneuvers, and landing the plane. The benefits of practicing with VR is that it's a lot cheaper in the long run than just letting some brand new pilot hop in a $75 million plane and crash it. While each VR headset costs about $500 to $700, along with the price, pilots have reported having fun while training, leading them to learn faster and get tired a lot less, which in the long run helps the trainees as they don't hate what they're doing and memorize the training a lot quickly. As well as training pilots to learn how to fly planes, VR is allowing pilots to take over unmanned drone. For now, this technology is only being used for recon missions, as it's against the Geneva Convention to use unmanned drones to kill people.
In conclusion, VR is very important to our society today, and we need it. It can help educate our society and make it a better place all throughout the world. It is used for video games, education, health, and helps grow a market in other countries and our own. Thank you, class. This was Darko, Tomislav, and Andre. And yeah.